In 1957, the Quoin State Fair, a patch of dash, splash, glitter, and charm etched into the farmland of southern Illinois, was hailed widely. Its lush green landscape, country innocence, and elaborate extravaganzas of sport and spectacle produced an aura befitting the crown jewel of harness racing's major trotting stakes.
For one of the few times in the history of the Classic, Grand Circuit flags wave on Hambletonian Day over a home other than Goshen, New York. The new home of the Hambletonian is the Quoin State Fairgrounds at Quoin, Illinois, where, more than 30 years ago, the late W.R. Hayes began transforming 30,000 acres of bleak, barren strip mining land into what is now acknowledged as one of the most beautiful fairgrounds in the world. In the middle of this land of lakes and lagoons, he laid out one of the finest and fastest trotting tracks in the world, and then began bidding for the privilege of staging the most famous harness race in the world. Mr. Hayes died before his Hambletonian dream came true, but his sons, Gene and Don, carried on the campaign. Racing fans began arriving early in the morning and are shuttled smoothly into the grounds and down tree-shaded lanes to the grandstand area where the county fair atmosphere, which so typifies harness racing, prevails in abundance.
Major magazines of the time flatly predicted Quoin's hold on the Hambletonian would last. A more perfect home was not likely to be found for a long, long time. Ironically, less than a quarter of a century later, many of those same sports journals were again pointing to the reasons that had made the Quoin, Illinois home so ideal, but this time identifying them as reasons why the race was being moved once more. The race had become an institution, bringing instant fame to the horse and driver that won it, enormous prestige to the racetrack that hosted it. Granted, the 1979 vote to uproot the stake was close. On a second ballot, 12 directors of the governing Hambletonian Society voted to change location, away from the county fair atmosphere which once so typified harness racing, to the lavishly swank Meadowlands track in New Jersey with its promise of $1 million purse in 1983 and even greater media exposure for the Hambletonian. Besides, the Hayes family, long the gracious custodians of the stake, no longer owned the fairgrounds home, having sold it early in 1979 to Iraqi national Saad Jaber. That last tie to its past broken, the Hambletonian would begin its third major era at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, but that wouldn't begin until next year. In 1980, the most prestigious trotting race of them all was still in Quoin. The final act was not expected to showcase a great group of horses. The 3-year-old trotters of 1980 were said to be average at best. Instead, this would be a year for great drama and emotion. The unprecedented crowd of 18,000 wasn't expecting any new records. They had come to be a part of history, an end of a glorious era, to experience something truly special. And that they did, together with one of the sport's most successful and honored trainer-drivers, William Houghton. Few races had eluded this Hall of Fame horseman like the Hambletonian. Starting in 1949, his 16 tries failed to produce a single winner. The event had been his jinx until 1974, when he virtually became its master. In the past 6 editions, he had won 3. The greatest, a world record victory with Green Speed in 1977.
Green Speed on the inside with Bill Houghton. Cold Comfort on the outside with Peter Houghton. 127-1 for 3/4. Green Speed on the inside.
In that race, he had waged a memorable stretch battle with his own son Peter, who was driving Cold Comfort. Part of a long tradition of father-son pairs in Hambletonian races through the years.
It's Green Speed. Green Speed is winning the Hambletonian.
But no family affair was ever as successful as the Houghtons. together winning record purses of over $2 or $3 million in each season from 1977 through 1979. They were more than just a father and son. They were business partners, buddies.
Well, the only thing that ever affected me was that he was always a great inspiration as a father and as being a great trainer and driver. And I always idolized him as some kids would idolize, you know, Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle when they were young.
In 1980, the Houghton's father-son tradition continued, but was tempered with heartbreak. 7 months before the Hambletonian, 25-year-old Peter Houghton lost control of his car on an icy road, was instantly killed. Peter had talked all that winter about a young trotter named Burgomeister. He had loved the colt more than any before. He owned half the horse, trained it, driven it, babied it. Peter was pointing the colt for the 1980 Hambletonian, where he planned to prove he was as competent a horse trainer as he was a horse driver. The young man's death greatly changed his father. William Houghton's normally easygoing, cool, and confident nature turned strangely quiet. Gone was his enthusiasm. He looked tired. He did not want to win the Hambletonian with Peter's horse. He had to. It became an obsession. Days before the race, he told a reporter, "I have never let anything get to me the way this has. I keep thinking about it, worrying about it. I don't know what I'll do if we don't win." And as of Hambletonian Day, it seemed he might not. The colt was winless in almost a month and a half. But this was not an ordinary year. It was almost impossible to pick a favorite. The year's best colts, Netted and Rodney's Best, were missing from the race, the result of leg injuries. No other colts seemed able to dominate the class. A half dozen sophomore colts politely taking turns winning the major trotting stakes. When the draw for post positions was held, 19 three-year-old trotters, the largest field since 1974, were entered. The large list forced the first heat to be split into 2 elimination races. The top 5 from each would return for a second race mile. The Houghton stable entered 2 trotters. Burgomeister, Peter's horse, was in the second group. Peter had dreamed of becoming the youngest driver ever to win the Hambletonian with that colt. But that honor seemed destined to go to a different Houghton, Peter's younger brother, Tom.
3-year-old Hambletonian trotters, first elimination, edition number 55 are at the post.
A driver for 4 years, after his brother's death, Tom seemed to drive with a determination to fill the gap left by Peter. On Hambletonian Day, he was behind the favorite in a division of the first heat, leading the field with a promising and late-developing colt named Final Score.
They're off and trotting. Final Score on the outside. Between them, Wonder Child down along the rail. Noble Hustle. Choctaw Brave out 4th. Balboa 5th on the outside. Along the rail, trotting 6th as they swing around the turn. Native Reel. There goes Petey Bone 7. Devil Hanover 8. Trotting 9 on the inside. Able Mission 10. Marino Hanover as they thunder toward the quarter-mile mark. Racing with the lead, Wonder Child, but only for a moment. There goes Final Score. Powering past the leader. He leads it and coming on. Turn for home. Final Score inside. Noble Hustle outside. Choctaw Brave will sweep 3 wide, and coming on is Devil Hanover. They're in the final 8th mile. Down along the rail, Final Score. Noble Hustle trying, coming at him, Devil Hanover. On the extreme outside, racing up Native Reel. They race to the lane. Between them, Noble Hustle. Racing to the wire, Devil Hanover along the rail. Final Score. Final Score has won the first elimination of the Hambletonian 1980 in 156 3/5. And with that win, Tommy Houghton becomes the youngest driver ever to win a heat of the Hambletonian. He's 23 years old. He has scored in 56 3.
In the second elimination division of horses, Yonkers trot winner Neville Impulse edged out Burgomeister as the betting favorite. Logic overruled sentiment. Burgomeister had the worst possible post position, the extreme outside with fast horses, including Neville Impulse, not likely to allow him an easy lead.
Here they come.
As the race began, the doubters seemed right. The post position had hurt. William Houghton and Burgomeister were stranded on the outside, never to see the rail. An impossible trip off which to win a Hambletonian. Some in the crowd feared Billy may have been trying too hard.
Now 7, 8, Leonard Hanover, and 9 and trailing Tracy Collins. Reaching the half-mile mark, being led past that station by Thor Viking. The half and 58 and 2, they're trotting into the final turn. Thor Viking leads the way. On the outside, Demon Renvey out second. Along the rail, Armbro Vanguard third. Trotting on the outside, Burgomeister keeps easing up. Now he's fourth. Along the rail, racing fifth. Neville Impulse locked in. Dixon Hanover 6 on the outside. Super Crown 7. Leonard Hanover from 8, and trailing still Tracy Collins. Approaching three-quarters, being led by Thor Viking. He's at that mark and 1:28 and 1. Thor Viking heads the Hambletonian trotters as they turn for home. Burgomeister pushed 3 wide, and here he comes on the outside. Burgomeister trotting a storm. Between them, Neville Impulse. Along the rail, still leading Thor Viking. Coming on Armbro Vanguard. Now Burgomeister, and on the inside, fighting back Thor Viking. Armbro Vanguard third. They race to the wire. On the outside, Burgomeister inside Thor Viking. It's going to be Burgomeister winning the second elimination in 1:58, owned by the estate of Peter Houghton and Florentino. How about a big hand for Bill Houghton and Burgomeister?
While the sport watched Final Score and Burgomeister get halfway to a Hambletonian win, a horse needing 2 victories to claim the stakes trophy, the Hambletonian itself was 2 heats closer to its final moments at Quoin. A win by either Houghton, and the great race was gone for good. A situation that drew out a set of emotions all its own. But the first World Trotting Derby was scheduled for September 5th, 1981. As for August 30th, 1980, attention was still focused on 10 3-year-old trotting colts and the last moments of the Hambletonian at Quoin, possibly the greatest contest of them all.
Is rolling. Final score, 56 and 3. Burgomeister 58 flat. Father versus son, Houghton versus Houghton, and 8 others in behind the gate. Here they come. They're off at trotting. Noble Hustle grabs the lead. Away second, Neville Impulse. Down along the rail. Final score third. Dropping in fourth, Burgomeister on the outside. There goes Armbro Vanguard fifth. Now fourth, now third. Racing on the outside sixth as they swing around the turn. Trotting toward the quarter is Native Real. Field of 3-year-olds being led now by Armbro Vanguard. It makes the top, leads it by a length and a half. Noble Hustle second. On the outside, driving up very quickly, Native Real as they drive toward the quarter-mile mark. There goes Native Real. At the quarter and 29, they're trotting on the backstretch. Headed down the backside, Armbro Vanguard leads it. Native Real off stride. Second, Noble Hustle. Third, Neville Impulse. 4, final score 5, Burgomeister 6, Devil Hanover. 7, Thor Viking. Racing 8, Super Crown. Trotting 9th down the backside toward the half-mile mark is Choctaw Brave. And on the outside and on the move and driving to the front, Noble Hustle as they approach the half-mile mark. And right behind him, Neville Impulse. On the inside, Armbro Vanguard now third. They're at the half, 58 seconds. Coming on fourth, final scores on the move. Right behind him comes Burgomeister. And Devil Hanover in along the rail sixth. And on the outside, dropping back off stride as they swing around the upper turn. Final score. They're trotting toward three-quarters, racing with the lead as they approach the three-quarter-mile mark. Still Neville Impulse coming on the outside as they swing that way. Noble Hustle and Burgomeister will come 3 wide, having made a break and out of the chase. Final score. They're past three-quarters, 1:27 and 1. They turn for home. Between them, Noble Hustle. Down along the rail, Neville Impulse. Coming on the outside, Burgomeister. They race to the wire. Noble Hustle between them, Burgomeister coming on. Racing in the lane, Devil Hanover closing ground also. Between trotters, Burgomeister. Here comes Devil Hanover. because this one is owned by the estate of Peter Houghton. He was the favorite of the Houghton barn. He's done the job. Bill Houghton, Burgomeister.
Bill Houghton won the 24th and final Hambletonian at Quoin, Illinois. He came away from the moment changed. Excitedly, he talked about the race. His confidence had returned, enthusiasm restored. He and his family had weathered their tragedy, had shared the sorrow, now the joy, with the 18,000 people in the stands.
I've been convinced since I was about 4 years old. I never knew how good I'd be, but I always just wanted to be as good as my ability would allow me. And of course, I'm a great believer that there's a lot of luck in this sport, and that you got to be in the right place at the right time. I myself would rather be considered a good horseman than a good race driver. And I think that's one of the greatest compliments a person can have in this business, is to be considered an all-around horseman.